Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Connie, and if you're new here, welcome. Today I'm going to tell you a story about the unsolved case of the Lake Bodom murders. Without further ado, let's get into it. Bodom murders. True event, unsolved, scary. Let's talk about it. I have my handy dandy notebook here because I have notes and you'll see me looking back and forth. I'm just making sure I reference everything so I can share this information with you. All right, today, like I said, I'm going over the tragedy that took place in 1960. It was in Finland. Now, when you think of Finland, you think of the aesthetics of the Northern Lights and just vacation. Unfortunately, a tragedy did take place and it occurred 60 years ago. And it was at a campsite at Lake Bodom. So in 1960, four people, two couples, decided to go on a camping trip. Two guys and two girls, boyfriend, girlfriend. Two 15-year-old girls at the time. The first girl, her name is Malaya. I might be butchering that, but I'll put her name somewhere here or somewhere on the screen. I'll put the names here. So I'm apologizing before I get slaughtered in the comments. I might be butchering these names, but I apologize. So it was two 15-year-old girls, one Malaya, the second girl was Anja, and it was their two 18-year-old boyfriends, Seppo and Niles. So they went out on a Saturday. They left on June 4th of 1960 and set out for a weekend camp trip. Now, sometime during the night, Seppo and Niles had got into an altercation. Niles was drinking, belligerent, started a fight with his friend, and ultimately ended up with him getting his jaw fractured, face fractured, bruises and everything, and then they kicked him out of the tent. Now, if you think of Finland, icy, cold, and it was in March. So, of course, he was probably mad that he had to be kicked out of the tent. He probably was cold, and he had a lot of animosity towards him. I mean, I wouldn't want to sleep outside in the cold. Yeah, he was drunk. People do crazy things when they're drinking. So, beside the point, he was assaulted. Even though he was intoxicated, he had to be set outside the tent. He was excluded from the group. Now, fast forward to the early morning of June 5th now, between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m. Malaya, and Anja and Seppo were stabbed and bludgeoned to death. Niles was the only survivor. He suffered a concussion along with the other fractures and bruising that he had because of the altercation the night before. 6 a.m. it said that bird watchers found a collapsed tent and a guy walking away from the campsite, blonde hair, leaving the campsite. So they didn't, I'm not sure. I couldn't find anything in my research about if the bird watchers contacted authorities or however the case was. I'm not sure, but the bird watchers did see the collapsed tent around 6 a.m. and then the bodies and the campers were actually discovered at 11 a.m. by Esko Johansson. And then later after that, around noon or 1, the police actually got to the scene. there were three prime suspects. The first suspect was Vladimir, and I'm gonna put his name somewhere on the screen as well. Vladimir, and the reason he was the suspect is because he had a track record of tormenting campers, being hostile toward campers and everything like that. But they had no hard evidence to keep the pin on him to blame him or convict him of these murders. So he was just, left alone. The second suspect was a guy named Hans Assmann. And he had a major focus on him because of several reasons. But to name a few, like here it says, he lived within miles of the lake. People suspected him, and an author by the name of Michael Newton actually wrote about him in a book called the Encyclopedia of Unsolved Murders. And in that book on page 213, it does give like insight and things like that connects the dots to this day, and that could pin him with the murder. And with that book, and I'll put the information on in the comments or in the description box, but it does name him as a prime suspect, like putting things together. It's just crazy. When I was researching all this, it's like, okay, but like I said, the book it's called the Encyclopedia of Unsolved Crimes, not Murders, Crimes. And it said on the time of this murder, he actually had an alibi. He was in Germany during the time of the Bodom murders, but he was also in the place during another murder. So, I don't know. Check out, if you're interested in learning a little more about the Bodom murders or any other unsolved murders, check out the Encyclopedia of Unsolved Crimes and see, what you think, and take on what you think. But even though he had an alibi and he was in Germany during his murders, he actually showed up miles away from the crime scene at a hospital in bloody clothes. But they didn't have anything concrete to stick him with the crime, so of course he didn't get charged. The third suspect was the fourth camper, the only survivor, which is Niles. He was the only survivor. He was the third suspect. And the reason they suspected him is because they say he had a motive. His motive was the altercation he had with his friend, and he got kicked out of the tent. Who knows how he was feeling, what he was thinking, what kind of relationship they had prior to this camp trip, and if the alcohol intensified those thoughts that he already probably had. You never know. But he wasn't convicted, so it's not for me to say if he did the crime or not. But they did suspect him. 44 years later, had convicted him, they suspected him, ran him in and everything, had a trial for a year. He was in prison for a year, and they let him go. It is said that Niles was barefoot at the scene of the crime, and that the shoes that were worn by the killer was 500 yards away from the actual campsite where the bodies were found, and that the shoes were property of Niles. And it's like, okay, the murderer wore these shoes. They had the blood stains of the campers that were murdered. They had the blood stains on the shoes. Niles was barefoot. Shoes were 500 yards away with his friend's blood on the shoes. So, it's just, I don't know. I mean, the DNA was found on the shoes. But in October, a year after he was arrested for the murder, he was acquitted of all his charges. So, I don't know. My speculation is, it's just my thoughts. I believe that he did the crime. I don't know. You never know. People have motives of their own. People do things. You just never know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If you heard of this story before, just let me know what you think, and we can chat about it in the comments. This true event is actually a movie as well. They actually did based on a true event movie that you can watch, and this particular movie is on Shudder. Shudder is a platform that you can watch horror movies. It's nothing but horror movies, and I've had the app for so long, and I mean I watch it all the time because I love horror, everything. This is not sponsored by any way with Shudder, so it's not a sponsored video. Just letting you know, if you are interested in watching this movie, it is available on Shudder. And just check it out. And I thank you very much for being with me during this story time. Like I said in the comments, tell me if you've heard about this crime, if you've seen this movie. If you don't, when you do, let me know what you think. We could chat about it in the comments. And until next time, stay scared. See ya.